Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UHS Discovery and watched the stars shift as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The year was 2387, and humanity had spread across 17 star systems in the past century. They had built colonies on distant worlds and made friends with over 40 different alien species. Trade routes connected human space to the far reaches of the galaxy, and diplomatic missions like this one happened every few months. Jake had been commanding exploration vessels for 12 years now. He remembered when humans first met the Altarians with their blue skin and 4 arms. He had been there when they established trade agreements with the insect-like Hive Collective. Each new species brought knowledge and technology that helped humanity grow stronger and wiser. Most aliens were curious about humans and wanted to learn about Earth culture. Some were cautious but respectful. A few had become close allies. The Discovery was heading to a region called the Andromeda Sector, where reports suggested a powerful species called the Zephyrians controlled several hundred star systems. Ambassador Lisa Carter sat in her quarters reviewing files about their destination. She had successfully negotiated with dozens of alien governments before, and this mission seemed routine. The Zephyrians had sent formal invitations for diplomatic contact through neutral channels. Everything appeared normal. Lisa walked onto the bridge carrying a data tablet with information about Zephyrian society. They were described as highly advanced beings with crystalline bodies that could change color based on their emotions. They possessed powerful telepathic abilities and had mastered technologies that most species could barely understand. Their civilization was thousands of years old, and they controlled vast territories in distant parts of the galaxy. The ship's communication officer received a message as they approached Zephyrian space. It contained navigational data and instructions for reaching their homeworld called Nexus Prime. The coordinates led them through a region filled with massive space stations and mining operations that stretched across entire asteroid fields. Zephyrian ships moved between the installations with smooth efficiency. Their vessels looked like living crystals that pulsed with internal light. Jake ordered his crew to follow the prescribed route toward Nexus Prime. The planet appeared on their screens as a brilliant blue-green world. Surrounded by orbital rings of metal and crystal, hundreds of ships moved in perfect formation around the planet. Each vessel was larger than anything humans had built, and their hulls seemed to shimmer with energy that bent light around them. A Zephyrian ship approached the Discovery and established communication. The alien voice spoke in perfect English through their translation systems. It welcomed them to Zephyrian space and instructed them to dock at a specific orbital platform. Lisa prepared her diplomatic credentials and cultural gifts, while Jake maneuvered their ship toward the designated area. The docking platform was enormous and could have held 50 ships the size of the Discovery. Zephyrian workers moved with fluid grace as they secured the human vessel. Their crystalline bodies reflected the station's lights in patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. Lisa and her diplomatic team prepared to disembark for their first meeting with Zephyrian officials. They were escorted through corridors lined with what looked like living crystal formations. The walls pulsed with soft colors that changed as they walked past. Everything about Zephyrian architecture seemed organic, despite being clearly artificial. Their guide was a tall being whose body shifted between deep purple and silver as it moved. It spoke in melodic tones that the translation software converted to heavily accented English. The meeting chamber was a vast dome where dozens of Zephyrians waited in a circle around a central platform. Lisa and her team were directed to stand in the center, while the aliens observed them silently. The largest Zephyrian stepped forward and its body blazed with bright gold light. This was clearly a leader of some importance based on how the others deferred to its presence. The golden Zephyrian spoke, and its words made Lisa's blood run cold. It declared that humanity had been observed and evaluated by Zephyrian scouts for several decades. Their expansion into space had been noted and catalogued by hidden watchers. The Zephyrian High Command had reached a unanimous decision about the human species after careful deliberation. Humans were classified as a primitive infestation that posed a threat to galactic stability. Their rapid expansion and alliance-building activities violated established territorial agreements that predated human spaceflight by millennia. The Zephyrian Empire had claimed exclusive rights to all systems within 1,000 light-years of their core territory, and humanity had unknowingly established colonies in forbidden Zones. The golden being continued speaking while Lisa struggled to process what she was hearing. It explained that Zephyrians had ruled their sector of the galaxy for over 10,000 years. They had encountered hundreds of species during their expansion, and everyone had been given the same choice. Submit to Zephyrian authority and accept permanent subjugation or face complete elimination from existence. No species had ever chosen elimination, because Zephyrian power was absolute, and their technology was beyond anything most civilizations could comprehend. They possessed weapons that could destroy entire star systems and fleets that numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Their empire stretched across 2 galaxy arms and contained more worlds than most species could count. Lisa tried to speak, but the Zephyrian raised one crystalline hand for silence. It stated that humans would be given 1 solar cycle to comply with Zephyrian demands. All human colonies outside their home system must be abandoned immediately. Every human vessel must return to Earth and remain there permanently. Humanity would be restricted to their single world under constant Zephyrian supervision. The alternative was simple and final. If humans refused to comply within 30 Earth days, then every human world would be destroyed, and the species would be eliminated completely. The Zephyrian had perfected genocide over millennia, and they assured Lisa that no human would survive their displeasure. To demonstrate their commitment, the golden being activated a holographic display showing 3 human colonies. Lisa recognized New Colorado, Haven Station, and the mining complex at Ross 128. Each settlement contained thousands of human civilians, including families with children. The display showed massive Zephyrian warships approaching each location. Lisa watched in horror as brilliant beams of energy struck all 3 colonies simultaneously. The settlement simply vanished in flashes of light that left nothing behind except empty space. 15,000 humans died in seconds to prove a point. The hologram faded, and the golden Zephyrian informed Lisa that similar demonstrations would continue daily until humanity submitted or ceased to exist. Ambassador Lisa Carter was escorted back to the Discovery in stunned silence. Jake took one look at her pale face and ordered immediate departure from Zephyrian space. As soon as they reached safe distance, Lisa sent an emergency message to Earth Command with the Zephyrian ultimatum. Humanity had 30 days to abandon everything they had built among the stars or face extinction. Admiral Ben Rodriguez received Lisa Carter's message while reviewing fleet positions at Earth Command headquarters. The words on his screen seemed impossible to believe, but the video evidence was undeniable. 3 human colonies had been vaporized without warning by weapons that defied understanding. The Zephyrian ultimatum gave humanity 30 days to abandon 17 star systems and return to Earth like defeated animals. Ben had served in the human fleet for 28 years and commanded vessels during the border wars with the Krellian pirates. He thought he understood military power, but the Zephyrian demonstration showed technology beyond anything humans possessed. Their weapons had simply erased matter from existence, leaving no debris or radiation signatures behind. Each strike had destroyed entire settlements in microseconds, with surgical precision that spoke of terrifying capability. Emergency sessions began immediately, in every human government and military facility across known space. President Maya Johnson called for unity, while Admiral Kate Williams prepared defensive positions around major human worlds. General Sam Hayes coordinated the evacuation of 12 million colonists from Outer Rim territories, while trying to maintain some semblance of order. Panic spread through human space as news of the Zephyrian threat reached civilian populations. The Zephyrian fleet appeared at the edge of human territory exactly 72 hours after their ultimatum expired. Long-range sensors detected 50,000 warships emerging from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Each vessel was larger than the biggest human battleship, and their hulls pulsed with energy that disrupted scanning equipment. The fleet moved with coordinated precision that suggested a level of organization humans had never encountered. Commander Ryan Clark commanded the defense station at Kepler base when the first Zephyrian attack began. His sensors showed impossible readings as enemy ships seemed to phase in and out of normal space. Zephyrian weapons fired beams of pure darkness that absorbed light and energy from everything they touched. When the beams struck human vessels, the ships didn't explode or break apart. They simply faded away as if they had never existed. Dr. Alex Turner worked frantically in his laboratory on Luna Station, analyzing fragments of Zephyrian technology recovered from their diplomatic vessels. What he discovered challenged everything humans thought they knew about physics and biology. Zephyrian technology wasn't built using traditional engineering methods. Instead, their devices seemed to grow like living organisms with crystalline matrices that connected to biological neural networks. The most disturbing discovery came when Alex examined Zephyrian communication systems. Every device was linked through quantum entanglement to a vast network that spanned their entire civilization. Individual Zephyrians weren't truly separate beings, but rather nodes in a collective consciousness that shared thoughts and experiences instantaneously across interstellar distances. They had achieved perfect unity of purpose through the complete elimination of individual identity. Admiral Kate Williams led the human fleet into battle at the Centauri system, hoping to buy time for civilian evacuations. Her ships were armed with the most advanced weapons humanity could build, including fusion torpedoes and particle beam cannons. The human fleet numbered 800 vessels crewed by the finest officers and sailors in known space. They had trained for this moment their entire careers. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. Zephyrian ships moved through dimensions that human science couldn't detect or understand. Their weapons bypassed shields and armor by rewriting the fundamental laws of physics in localized areas. Human missiles simply ceased to exist when they encountered Zephyrian defensive fields. Energy weapons were absorbed and redirected back at their sources with amplified power. But the worst horror came when Zephyrian boarding pods attached to human vessels. The aliens didn't kill human crews with conventional weapons. Instead, they drained the life force directly from living beings using technology that converted biological energy into power for their war machines. 17,000 human sailors died, screaming as their very souls were consumed to fuel enemy systems. Ryan watched helplessly from Kepler Base as Admiral Williams' flagship was boarded by crystalline beings that moved like liquid mercury. The crew's vital signs disappeared one by one as Zephyrian technology fed on their life energy. Kate Williams died at her command post while sending a final message warning all human forces about the true nature of their enemy. Her last words were broadcast across human space before her ship became another glowing battery in the Zephyrian fleet. The aliens didn't stop with military targets. They began systematically destroying civilian transports and cargo vessels throughout human territory. Each attack was accompanied by broadcasts showing Zephyrian leaders mocking human weakness and primitive technology. They called humans an infestation of lower life forms that needed to be cleansed from the galaxy like any other pest species. Overlord Vexathari appeared on every human communication channel with a message of absolute contempt. The golden crystalline being spoke in perfect English while displaying images of burning human colonies. It declared that humanity's pathetic resistance only proved their unworthiness to exist alongside superior races. The Zephyrians had conquered over 200 species during their expansion, and humans were by far the most disappointing opponents they had encountered. The broadcast continued, with detailed descriptions of how human survivors would be processed. Adult males would be converted into biological batteries to power Zephyrian machinery. Females would serve as breeding stock to produce more energy sources for the war effort. Children would be raised as servile workers in Zephyrian industrial facilities. Until they were old enough to join the battery farms, no human would be allowed to die naturally or peacefully. Dr. Turner made one final discovery before Luna Station was destroyed by Zephyrian planet killers. The aliens' collective consciousness network had a critical weakness built into its quantum entanglement structure. If the right frequency could be generated at sufficient power levels, it might be possible to overload their entire communication system. The information was transmitted to Earth just moments before crystalline invaders consumed every living being on the research station. General Hayes received Turner's data while coordinating the defense of Mars colony. Human forces were retreating on every front, and civilian casualties were climbing into the millions. The Zephyrians seemed unstoppable with technology that treated human weapons like children's toys. But Turner's final message contained something unexpected. For the first time since the war began, humans had identified a potential vulnerability in their seemingly invincible enemy. The message reached Earth. Command as Zephyrian forces began their assault on the outer planets. Humanity had lost 70% of their fleet and abandoned half their colonies. The aliens were systematically destroying everything humans had built among the stars, while broadcasting their victory across the galaxy. Other species watched in silence as the Zephyrians demonstrated what happened to civilizations that refused to submit to their authority. But deep in hidden laboratories, on Earth, human scientists were already working on something new. President Maya Johnson called an emergency meeting of the Global Defense Council in the deepest bunker beneath Geneva. Representatives from every nation and colony arrived within hours despite the chaos spreading across human space. The Zephyrian fleet was destroying everything in its path, while their broadcast taunted humanity about their inevitable extinction. For the first time in human history, every government agreed that only one response was possible. The vote was unanimous. Total war. Dr. Jennifer Walsh received clearance to access Project Prometheus within 6 hours of the council meeting. The classified research program had been running for 15 years in hidden facilities, scattered across 50 star systems. Scientists had been developing weapons that violated multiple galactic treaties, including quantum virus bombs and reality manipulation devices. The project had remained secret because no human leader wanted to be responsible for unleashing such terrible power. Now, humanity had no choice. Jennifer coordinated with research teams on 12 different worlds as they began mass production of weapons designed to kill entire species. Factories that had built civilian spacecraft were converted overnight to produce planet crackers and dimensional siege engines. Mining colonies started extracting materials for bombs that could destroy solar systems. Every human settlement contributed resources to the war effort with desperate efficiency. Captain Danny Cooper was selected to command the first vessel equipped with mirror protocol technology. His ship, the UHS Vengeance, was retrofitted with weapons reverse-engineered from captured Zephyrian equipment, but modified using human engineering principles. Instead of draining life force from victims, the new systems converted matter directly into energy, using controlled antimatter reactions. The power output exceeded anything Zephyrians had demonstrated. Danny tested his new weapons on abandoned asteroids in the Sol system while Zephyrian forces continued their advance toward Earth. The results were beyond his wildest expectations. A single shot from the main cannon converted an entire mountain-sized rock into pure energy that could power a human city for decades. The beam weapons cut through space itself, leaving tears in reality that took hours to heal. Naturally, Admiral Rodriguez took command of the new human fleet as it assembled in hidden bases throughout the Outer Rim. 200,000 vessels emerged from secret construction facilities that had been disguised as civilian installations. Each ship was armed with weapons that made previous human technology look like stone knives. The crews had trained in virtual reality systems that prepared them for warfare beyond anything their species had ever attempted. The Zephyrians detected the approaching human fleet while they were destroying the colony at New Geneva. Overlord Vexithari dismissed the readings as impossible because their scouts had confirmed that human industrial capacity was insufficient to build such a force. The crystalline being assumed that humans were using holographic projections to create the illusion of strength while preparing to surrender their homeworld. Colonel Lisa Murphy deployed the first Cascade weapon. During the engagement at New Geneva, the device looked like a simple missile, but contained technology based on Dr. Turner's final research about Zephyrian neural networks. When the weapon struck a single enemy vessel, it sent a quantum pulse through their collective consciousness network. Every Zephyrian within a light-year radius experienced simultaneous neurological collapse as their shared mind overloaded. 15,000 Zephyrian ships lost power instantly as their crews fell unconscious or died from neural feedback. The aliens who survived found themselves experiencing individual consciousness for the first time in their evolutionary history. The psychological trauma was devastating, as beings who had shared thoughts for millennia suddenly found themselves alone in their own minds. Many went insane from the isolation, while others simply shut down from shock. The human fleet pressed their advantage using weapons that the Zephyrians couldn't understand or counter. Quantum viruses infected enemy computer systems through their biological neural networks, causing ships to attack each other. Reality anchors prevented Zephyrian vessels from phasing between dimensions, trapping them in normal space where human weapons could target them effectively. Planet crackers fired concentrated gravitational waves that tore enemy formations apart at the molecular level. Captain Cooper led a squadron of mirror protocol ships against the Zephyrian command vessel where Overlord Vexthari was, coordinating the invasion. The alien leader's ship was larger than a human city, and protected by shields that had never been penetrated in 10,000 years of warfare. Danny ordered his gunners to fire everything they had at maximum power while his ship's computers calculated targeting solutions for weapons that operated outside normal physics. The Zephyrian flagship's shields collapsed under sustained bombardment from matter conversion beams. Vexthari sent desperate messages to the human fleet offering to negotiate terms and discuss peaceful coexistence. Danny received the transmission while his weapons charged for a final strike. His response was broadcast across all frequencies so every human and alien ship could hear his words clearly. You had your chance for peace. You chose genocide instead. The combined firepower of 50 Mirror Protocol vessels struck the Zephyrian flagship simultaneously. The enormous ship simply ceased to exist as every atom in its structure was converted to energy in a controlled reaction. The explosion created a miniature star that burned for several minutes before fading away. Overlord Vexthari and 10,000 Zephyrian nobles died instantly along with their shared memories and accumulated knowledge. The remaining Zephyrian fleet attempted to retreat, but found their escape routes blocked by human vessels that had anticipated their withdrawal. Admiral Rodriguez had positioned his forces to prevent any enemy ship from reaching faster than light speed. For the first time in their species' history, the Zephyrians found themselves trapped and outgunned by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive. Insects Jennifer Walsh monitored the battle from her command center while her teams prepared even more devastating weapons for the next phase of the war. The Cascade technology was being refined to affect larger areas, while new virus designs targeted Zephyrian biological systems directly. She had received authorization to deploy planet killers against any world that harbored enemy forces. Regardless of civilian casualties, the battle at New Geneva ended with the complete destruction of the Zephyrian invasion fleet. Not a single enemy vessel escaped to warn their homeworld about humanity's true capabilities. The aliens who had boasted about conquering hundreds of species learned what it meant to face an enemy that fought without mercy or restraint when their survival was threatened. Danny transmitted a message to Earth Command, confirming total victory at New Geneva. Human forces had suffered minimal casualties while eliminating over 50,000 enemy ships. The Zephyrians' reputation for invincibility was shattered, along with their invasion fleet. But the war was far from over, and humanity was just beginning to show their true potential for destruction. Admiral Chris Baker received command of Operation Starfall 3 days after the victory at New Geneva. His mission was simple but absolute. Hunt down every Zephyrian ship, station, and settlement in the galaxy and destroy them completely. The human fleet now numbered over 200,000 vessels armed with weapons that violated the fundamental laws of physics. No Zephyrian would be allowed to survive the war they had started. Dr. Amanda Price worked around the clock perfecting the silence protocol in her laboratory deep beneath the Martian polar ice cap. The new technology could sever Zephyrian quantum connections permanently and force them to experience individual consciousness for the first time in their evolution. Early tests on captured prisoners showed that the psychological trauma was more devastating than any physical torture. Zephyrians who lost their connection to the collective mind suffered complete mental breakdown within hours. Chris deployed his fleets across 17 different sectors where Zephyrian forces were known to operate. The aliens had scattered after their defeat at New Geneva, but human intelligence networks tracked their movements through subspace monitoring stations. Every enemy ship was marked for destruction, regardless of whether it carried military personnel or civilian refugees. Humanity had learned that Zephyrians made no distinction between combatants and non-combatants when they attacked human colonies. The first major engagement occurred at the Vortex Nebula, where a Zephyrian fleet of 30,000 ships had gathered around their mobile command base. General Tony Martinez led the assault using planet crackers and dimensional siege engines that tore holes in space itself. The enemy formation was trapped between gravity wells that prevented escape while human weapons systematically destroyed every vessel in the area. Overlord Kethanari commanded the Zephyrian forces at Vortex Nebula and watched in horror as his supposedly invincible fleet was annihilated by primitive humans. The crystalline being had lived for over 2,000 years and conquered dozens of species during his military career. Never before had he encountered an enemy that fought with such ruthless efficiency and complete disregard for galactic conventions of warfare. Tony received a direct communication from Kathnari as the last Zephyrian ships were being destroyed. The alien overlord offered complete surrender and eternal servitude if humans would spare the surviving crew members. He promised to provide intelligence about Zephyrian military installations and offered to serve as a human agent in exchange for his life. The plea was transmitted across all human frequencies, so every ship could hear the enemy begging for mercy. Tony's response became legendary throughout human space and was later carved into monuments across dozens of worlds. He spoke slowly and clearly so the translation systems would convey his exact meaning to every Zephyrian listener. You had your chance to coexist. You chose extinction instead. The transmission ended as human weapons vaporized the remaining enemy vessels, along with their crews and commanders. Captain Nicole Barnes led a special investigation team to worlds that Zephyrians had conquered during their expansion across the galaxy. What they discovered made even hardened military veterans sick with rage. Ancient archives revealed over 10,000 years of systematic genocide committed against species that had tried to resist Zephyrian rule. Entire civilizations had been enslaved and tortured for entertainment before being exterminated when they were no longer amusing. The planet Xerion contained monuments built from the bones of extinct species arranged in geometric patterns that covered entire continents. Each structure represented a different civilization that Zephyrians had destroyed for sport, rather than strategic necessity. Museums displayed preserved specimens of intelligent beings who had been kept alive in laboratory conditions while scientists studied their pain responses and survival instincts. Nicole transmitted her findings to Earth Command along with video, evidence of Zephyrian atrocities that stretched back millennia. The documentation showed that humans were not dealing with conquerors or even traditional enemies. They were fighting sociopathic predators who had elevated cruelty to an art form and considered genocide a recreational activity. Any possibility of mercy or negotiation vanished when humanity realized the true nature of their opponents. Dr. Price deployed the first large-scale silence protocol weapon against a Zephyrian colony world called Nexus 7. The device was delivered by stealth ship and activated in the planet's upper atmosphere where it could affect every crystalline being on the surface simultaneously. Within minutes, 10 million Zephyrians lost their connection to the collective consciousness and found themselves experiencing individual thought for the first time. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Beings who had shared every thought and emotion with their species suddenly found themselves alone in their own minds. They had no concept of individual identity or personal decision-making, because every choice had been made collectively for millions of years. Most Zephyrians simply collapsed and died from the trauma of isolation while others went violently insane and began attacking each other. Amanda monitored the effects through surveillance satellites, while human ground forces secured the planet. The few Zephyrians who survived the mental separation were completely helpless and posed no threat to human soldiers. They wandered aimlessly through their cities crying for their lost connection, while their advanced technology shut down without collective intelligence to operate it. The weapon had effectively lobotomized an entire civilization without firing a single shot. Human fleets continued their systematic hunt across the galaxy, using improved sensors that could detect Zephyrian quantum signatures from incredible distances. Enemy ships trying to hide in asteroid fields or nebulae were discovered and destroyed with ruthless efficiency. Refugee convoys carrying Zephyrian civilians were vaporized along with military vessels because humans had learned that the aliens made no distinction between soldiers and support personnel in their own attacks. Chris received reports that Zephyrian resistance was collapsing across all fronts as their remaining forces realized the hopelessness of their situation. Enemy commanders were abandoning their posts and fleeing toward the Galactic Rim, while their subordinates surrendered or committed suicide rather than face human weapons. The species that had dominated their region of space for millennia was being systematically exterminated by enemies they had dismissed as primitive. Insects. The final major battle occurred when human forces surrounded Nexus Prime itself. The Zephyrian homeworld was protected by defensive installations that had never been challenged in their recorded history. Planet-wide shield generators powered by the planet's core created barriers that could supposedly withstand supernova-level energy releases. Orbital weapons platforms carried enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. Nicole commanded the assault fleet that approached Nexus Prime, while Amanda prepared the ultimate silence protocol device. The weapon was designed to sever every quantum connection on the planet simultaneously, while converting the world's crystalline structures into pure energy. The Zephyrian homeworld would become humanity's final statement about the consequences of threatening human existence. Captain Nicole Barnes watched through the bridge windows as Nexus Prime burned beneath a storm of human weapons fire. The Zephyrian homeworld had resisted for exactly 47 minutes, before its legendary defenses collapsed under bombardment from planet crackers and reality manipulation devices. Orbital platforms that had protected the world for 10,000 years were converted into energy and scattered across the solar system as glowing particles. Dr. Amanda Price activated the final silence protocol device while Zephyrian civilians fled through the streets of their crystal cities. The weapon severed every quantum connection on the planet simultaneously and forced millions of beings to experience individual consciousness for the first time in their evolutionary history. The collective screams of an entire species echoed through subspace as their shared mind died forever. Nicole ordered her fleet to begin the final phase of Operation Starfall. Controlled antimatter reactions ignited at strategic points across Nexus Prime's surface, while dimensional charges destabilized the planet's core structure. The world that had served as the center of Zephyrian civilization for millennia began collapsing into itself as matter was converted directly into energy using human technology that defied galactic understanding. The death of Nexus Prime created a new star that blazed with the accumulated energy of an entire planet. Zephyrian colonies across the galaxy detected the distinctive radiation signature and realized that their homeworld had been completely destroyed. The species that had conquered hundreds of civilizations during their expansion now faced the same extinction they had inflicted on countless others. Admiral Chris Baker received the final battle reports while standing on the bridge of his flagship above the cooling remains of what had once been Nexus Prime. Operation Starfall had lasted exactly 127 days from beginning to end. Human forces had located and destroyed every Zephyrian installation in known space, without suffering significant casualties. Not a single member of the alien species remained alive anywhere in the galaxy. The War Crimes Tribunal on Earth cataloged evidence recovered from destroyed Zephyrian worlds and reached conclusions that horrified even experienced military investigators. Over 200 intelligent species had been systematically exterminated by Zephyrian forces during their 10,000-year expansion. Billions of sentient beings had been tortured and killed for entertainment while their worlds were strip-mined for resources. Ambassador Kevin Ross prepared to address the Galactic Council for the first time since humanity had declared total war against the Zephyrians. Representatives from 847 different species gathered in the neutral space station that served as the galaxy's diplomatic center. Most aliens had remained silent during the conflict because they feared becoming the next target of either side. Kevin walked into the council chamber wearing the black uniform of human military forces instead of traditional diplomatic robes. The assembled alien representatives watched in absolute silence as he approached the central podium, where speakers traditionally offered greetings and requests for peaceful dialogue. No one spoke or moved as the human ambassador began delivering humanity's new policy statement. He explained that humans had originally sought peace and friendship with all intelligent species they encountered during their expansion into space. They had offered trade agreements and cultural exchanges while respecting the territorial claims of established civilizations. Humanity had followed galactic law and diplomatic protocol even when dealing with species that were openly hostile or suspicious of human intentions. The Zephyrians had repaid human friendship with attempted genocide and demonstrated that some species could not be reasoned with or appeased through normal diplomatic channels. Their systematic extermination of over 200 civilizations proved that they were fundamentally incompatible with peaceful coexistence. Humanity had therefore exercised their right of self-defense by eliminating the threat completely and permanently. Kevin continued speaking while alien representatives listened with growing unease to his calm description of Zephyrian extinction. He noted that human military forces had deployed less than 12% of their total destructive capacity during the recent conflict. The weapons used against Zephyrian targets were considered obsolete, by current human military standards, and newer systems were already being developed for future conflicts. Dr. Helen Wright published her classified study of human warfare capabilities 3 days after Kevin's address to the Galactic Council. The document revealed that humanity had been deliberately restraining their military development for over 2 centuries to avoid alarming alien neighbors. Project Prometheus represented only the first generation of weapons designed for total war, and more advanced systems were being tested in secret facilities. The revelation sent shockwaves through galactic civilization, as species realized that humans had been intentionally appearing weaker than they actually were for diplomatic reasons. Military analysts calculated that humanity could have conquered most of known space within decades if they had chosen expansion over cooperation. The peaceful trade relationships humans had established were acts of conscious restraint rather than technological limitation. Former Zephyrian territories were claimed by various species, but none dared establish permanent settlements in systems where human patrols operated. An informal buffer zone of several hundred light-years formed around human space, maintained not by military force but by universal understanding that humanity preferred to be left alone. Trade continued, but alien merchants approached human worlds with obvious deference and respect. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of humanity's newest flagship, the UHS Retribution, as it patrolled the major trade routes between human and alien space. The massive vessel was armed with weapons that could destroy entire star systems, but its primary mission was peaceful commerce protection. Alien ships yielded right-of-way without being asked, and pirate activity had completely ceased in areas where human patrols operated. A message arrived from the Kelhari Confederacy requesting permission to establish diplomatic contact with humanity. The insectoid species controlled 12 star systems near the galactic core and had existed peacefully for over 3,000 years. Their message followed the new standard format that had become common throughout known space since the Zephyrian extinction. The communication began with formal recognition of humanity's right to exist without challenge or interference. It included detailed information about Kelhari society and technology, along with offers of mutual trade agreements and cultural exchange programs. The message ended with assurances that the Kelhari people sought only peaceful coexistence and friendship with their human neighbors. Jake approved the diplomatic contact and forwarded the message to Earth Command for formal response. Similar requests arrived daily from species across the galaxy as civilizations competed to establish friendly relationships with humanity. The lesson of Zephyrian extinction had been learned by every intelligent species in known space. Humanity never again faced an existential threat from alien aggression. The galaxy had learned that there were consequences for mistaking human patience and restraint for weakness or vulnerability. The Zephyrians became a cautionary tale told across the stars about what happened to species that chose genocide over coexistence. Peace returned to human space, but it was a different kind of peace than before. Other species understood that humanity possessed the capability for absolute destruction, while choosing to exercise restraint and mercy toward those who showed proper respect. The last species that had provoked humanity no longer existed, and no one wanted to become the next example.